This marks the first part of the second season of this manhwa. If you haven't viewed the previous season, you can access it by clicking the I button located above, or the link is provided in description. Let's aim for 200 likes on today's video. To show your support, consider subscribing to the channel. Let's begin our recap video for today's manhwa. Bright and early the next day, a jet lands at the Ark compound, carrying international visitors, including James Oryu from the United States. The tropical humidity prompts James to unbutton his collar as they disembark. Ark soldiers await their arrival and quickly inform Chief Officer Alexander that the Supreme Council inspectors have arrived. Chief Alexander directs the soldiers to escort the inspectors to the conference room. As the inspectors approach, the soldiers stand at attention and distribute GPS watches equipped with a map of the compound, acknowledging the complexity and size of Ark, which could easily confuse newcomers. They emphasize the importance of using the GPS to navigate and guide them to the main conference room. Inspector James Oryu, displaying a composed demeanor, privately notes the usefulness of the GPS watch, ensuring he has a comprehensive understanding of the compound layout. He hums to himself in satisfaction, recognizing that having a map is crucial for their inspection purposes. Inspector James displays a confident and assertive demeanor upon arriving at Ark's compound, dismissing the soldiers' attempt to direct him to the conference room. He asserts his independence, stating he operates on his own schedule as an inspector, leaving the soldier begrudgingly compliant and foreseeing potential challenges ahead with James's approach. James acknowledges the likelihood of encountering withheld information at Ark, prompting him to resolve to conduct thorough investigations independently. Before leaving the soldier, James abruptly inquires about Han, indicating a specific interest in meeting the young prodigy. Later, at the training grounds, Jose, Knut, and Kuro are taken aback by the sight of candy in their hands, their surprise evident in their wide-eyed expressions. Inspector James approaches with a grin, introducing himself warmly and teasing about more treats to come. Despite their mature appearances, James perceives them as still youthful at heart. Han remains focused on the task at hand despite Inspector James's friendly approach at the training grounds. Asserting his authority, Han makes it clear that they have responsibilities to fulfill. Recognizing Han's determination, Inspector James acquiesces without resistance, assuring Han that he won't interfere. Han efficiently organizes his team, directing them to prepare for shooting practice at the gun range. As they commence training, Inspector James observes Han closely, reflecting on the young man's transformation from an unremarkable newcomer to a respected leader within Ark. James acknowledges Han's impressive track record, noting his significant achievements in battles and his pivotal role during the recent dimensional tier incidents. While gunfire echoes from the range, Inspector James takes a moment to stretch outside, contemplating the intense dedication displayed by Han and his squad. He contrasts their diligence with other squads, who appear to be on break due to the absence of scheduled matches since the dimensional tier events. As the automatic gates open, signaling the end of Squad 13's shooting training, Inspector James takes notice. Han immediately commands his team, directing them swiftly to the weapons training gym without hesitation. This decisive action surprises James, who silently acknowledges the intensity and discipline of the young squad. With the sun beginning to set over the compound, Inspector James observes from a vantage point as Han calls out his next order, a one-on-one sparring session between himself and Kuro. Despite Kuro's superior psychic abilities compared to Han, he hesitates, feeling apprehensive at the prospect of sparring with Han. Both warriors equip themselves with staffs, and Han instructs Kuro to assume his position. Inwardly, Kuro questions Han's motives for challenging him to spar. He senses a newfound determination and intensity in Han's gaze, realizing that Han has learned valuable lessons since their recent mission at the dimensional tier. Han understands that in real battles, relying solely on elite psychic abilities is insufficient to secure victory. He recognizes the need for Kuro to diversify his combat skills and enhance his strategic mindset. Han engages Kuro in a rigorous sparring session, demonstrating his agility and determination as he swiftly closes the distance between them. Kuro, preparing with his staff, activates his foresight ability to anticipate Han's movements before they occur. This precognitive ability enables Kuro to narrowly evade Han's initial strike, showcasing his defensive prowess. However, Han presses forward relentlessly, unleashing a rapid succession of attacks that force Kuro into a defensive position. Despite Kuro's foresight, the sheer intensity of Han's assault overwhelms him, leaving him physically drained and struggling to keep up. As Han continues to push, Kuro realizes his exhaustion has compromised his ability to effectively utilize his foresight. Finding an opening in Kuro's defenses, Han exploits it, knocking Kuro off balance and placing his weapon against Kuro's jaw. Han emphasizes the importance of combining defensive abilities with offensive tactics, highlighting the limitations of relying solely on foresight in combat. Stepping back, Han challenges Kuro to counterattack. Caught off guard and visibly nervous, Kuro takes a hesitant stab at Han, but Han easily anticipates and deflects the attack, disarming Kuro in the process. Disheartened by his perceived failure, Kuro apologizes, his confidence shaken. In response, Han offers encouragement, reassuring Kuro that mistakes are part of learning. He urges Kuro to refocus and directs him to attack with full determination and intensity. And the next round of their sparring session, Kuro, Knut, and Jose are struck with astonishment and a hint of fear as they contemplate the impending sparring match between Kuro and Han. They all recognize Kuro's immense psychic power, adding an air of tension to the atmosphere. And sure of what to expect, Kuro and Han face each other with uncertainty. To clarify the situation, Han addresses Kuro with a confident aura, his psychic energy visibly emanating around him, and his eyes gleaming with determination. He announces his intention to give his all in the upcoming spar, encouraging Kuro to do the same. Knut and Jose understand that while Han's physical combat skills are formidable, Kuro's psychic abilities could tip the scales unpredictably. Han lightens the tense mood with a playful comment, teasing Kuro about his concern over potentially harming him. Kuro exhales deeply, acknowledging Han's challenge while recognizing that there's likely a purpose behind Han's unconventional approach. The gymnasium vibrates with anticipation, heightening the nervousness of onlookers like Knut and Jose. Summoning his resolve, Kuro harnesses his psychic power and accepts Han's challenge, promising to meet Han's expectations and engage in the sparring match with full commitment. Han visits Instructor Chen in his office, where he receives a cup of oolong tea, which he thoroughly enjoys and expresses gratitude for. Instructor Chen observes Han's genuine appreciation, noting that it's a rare moment to see Han act bashfully and his age. Han confides in Instructor Chen about his concerns regarding Kuro's combat readiness. He explains that while Kuro possesses powerful abilities, he lacks the assertiveness and aggressiveness needed in real battle scenarios. Han fears that this deficiency could endanger Kuro's life in a critical situation. Instructor Chen listens attentively and offers insights into the concept of emotional distance in combat. He explains that emotional distance determines how effectively a person can detach themselves emotionally from their actions in combat. Drawing an analogy, Instructor Chen contrasts the difficulty a trained killer may have in killing someone with their bare hands versus the detachment someone might feel when operating a drone to carry out attacks remotely. Instructor Chen underscores the importance for Kuro to have a personal motivation or reason to fight beyond mere orders. He recalls Kuro's earlier use at Ark, highlighting moments when Kuro displayed his formidable abilities out of trust and loyalty towards Han. Instructor Chen emphasizes the need for Han to rekindle that trust and belief in Kuro, encouraging Han to find a way to inspire Kuro to fight with purpose and determination. Han, as he undoes his jacket, contemplates the message he received from Instructor Chen. Meanwhile, Jose comments on Kuro's extreme nature, stating, Kuro is either at 0 or 100 man. Knut then suggests that they should intervene before Kuro reaches a point of unleashing his devastating power with no possibility of turning back. Inspector James observes the situation and marvels at Kuro's abilities, thinking, "Wow, so that's what a class A psyker looks like." Han, however, is not surprised by Kuro's impressive capabilities. Jose and Knut continue their conversation, expressing concern that Han won't be able to avoid the incoming spears, as Kuro's foresight will allow him to predict Han's movements. Kuro uses his telekinesis to hurl spears at Han, who activates his psychic energy and catches one before it lands. Han thinks to himself that he could have thrown the spear harder with his bare hands than Kuro did with telekinesis. Knut suggests that Han should catch the spear instead of dodging it, to which Jose responds that Knut wouldn't be able to catch it even if his life depended on it. Smirking, Han taunts Kuro for only sending one spear his way and challenges him to escalate the intensity. Despite the taunt, Kuro still holds back a bit. Han then calls out to Kuro, urging him to use the spear in his hand to fight and show what he's truly capable of. Han charges towards Kuro, who responds by launching multiple spears at him. Han skillfully dodges and deflects the spears as he advances. When Kuro sends the final batch of spears, Han undoes his jacket and, using his telekinesis, knocks all the spears away. Jose, astonished, exclaims that Han used telekinesis on his jacket to block the spears. Knut urgently shouts to Kuro to use his staff. As Han closes in, Kuro swings his staff, but Han swiftly breaks it in half. Now face to face, Han flicks Kuro on the forehead and triumphantly says, "Gotcha." Han congratulates Kuro for keeping his eyes open during the attack, noting that most people would have closed them. Knut and Jose cheer for Han's impressive performance. Han then advises Kuro, pointing out that his only weakness is his kind heart. He explains that Kuro should have varied his attack instead of aiming all the spears at Han's gut, suggesting that targeting different spots could have been more effective. Kuro blushes and admits he avoided aiming at Han's face, complimenting Han on his smart use of the jacket. Inspector James, who has been observing, realizes that the rumors about Han do not do justice to his abilities. He thinks he can extract the information he needs from Han, which Ark is trying to hide. Inspector James then approaches Squad 13 in the gym and interrupts, asking Han if they can have a quick chat. As Inspector James and Han step outside to talk, Han inquires if the discussion pertains to the second-year students who died in the ambush at the dimensional crack, noting he has already submitted his report. Inspector James replies that he understands but believes hearing the story directly from Han would be more insightful. Inviting Han to sit beside him, Inspector James, feeling confident about his own perceptive abilities, thinks of his super reaction as a gift. As Han recounts the events, Inspector James listens with a cheerful demeanor, aiming to make Han comfortable enough to share more details. When Han nears the end of his story, Inspector James eagerly asks, "What happened after the tear?" Han, looking confused, responds, "What happened after? That was it, sir. Nothing else." Inspector James observes that Han's expression has remained unchanged throughout their conversation and that his account mirrors the details in the report. Han stands, salutes the inspector, and excuses himself to return to training with his squad. As he walks away, Han thinks to himself, Operation Whiskey is confidential at all costs. You can't squeeze anything out of me, Inspector James. The inspector reaches for his phone and makes a call, instructing, find out if Han was on Ark base ever since he returned from when the chopper blew up. The next morning, Han is sprinting with his squad during their morning routine. Another squad rapidly approaches from behind, chanting, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, led by their old friend Dimitri. As they meet, Han compliments Dimitri on his boundless energy. Dimitri, looking concerned, explains that he's been staying as busy as possible, even though he prefers not to. He then points out one of the inspectors, noting that this inspector is from his home country of Russia. Dimitri confides in Han that the Russian inspector has been tailing him incessantly for the past few days, pressuring him to join the Russian army after the war with the dragons ends. Han, puzzled, asks, "What does he want? You to fight against Ark? Ark will be shut down once the war with the dragons is over, man." As they continue running, Dimitri reveals to Han that once all the dragons are eradicated, the top brass are actually devising a plan to initiate another war to take over the world. Han is absolutely stunned by Dimitri's revelation. Later that day, during intense combat training, Squad 13 maintains their rigorous pace while Han oversees them, though his mind is elsewhere. He is deeply troubled by the possibility that, after defeating the dragons, the top brass might continue to wage war on the rest of the world instead of achieving peace. Suddenly, Han's thoughts and the squad's training are abruptly interrupted as Inspector James bursts through the door with a loud bang. Inspector James, feeling confident, thinks to himself that Han must have gone on a secret mission with Squad 13 in the days following the incident. The squad members glance back, puzzled by the inspector's overly dramatic entrance. As he strides towards Han, Inspector James is determined to turn his suspicions into concrete evidence, vowing to uncover the truth from Han, even if it means using force. At that moment, everyone's watches simultaneously sound a serious alert, drawing their attention back to Inspector James and his guards who wear solemn expressions. Inspector James appears unsettled by the sudden seriousness in the atmosphere. Seizing the opportunity, Han swiftly moves behind the inspector and starts to restrain his hands. In response, the guards react by reaching for their guns, but before they can act, Kuro intervenes with his formidable telekinetic power. In an instant, Kuro disarms the guards, causing their fingers to be mangled in the process, ensuring no one dares to touch his best friend, Han. Han firmly informs Inspector James, "We've been ordered to keep you under our protection." Inspector James, in pain from Kuro's telekinetic intervention, demands to know the reason behind this order. Han responds that new orders have just been received and advises Inspector James to comply. Before Inspector James can inquire further, the gymnasium suddenly shakes violently as pieces of the ceiling start to collapse. Han shouts, "We're under attack," as he reads a message on his watch instructing them to protect the inspectors immediately due to an ongoing raid. In the midst of the chaos, Inspector James begins to suspect the presence of a spy among the inspectors. Han swiftly takes charge of the situation, ordering Jose to keep a close watch on Inspector James while instructing Jose and Knut to prepare their weapons. Kuro, bewildered, asks if the attack is originating from the Elismage, but Han's intense expression reveals that they are facing human adversaries. With Inspector James and his guards securely restrained, Han and his team gear up for the imminent threat. Han uses his radio to coordinate with other squad members, instructing them to confirm the number of inspectors and guards they are protecting. Each squad reports back, and Inspector James is astonished to realize that even other squad leaders defer to Han's authority. Already formulating a plan, Han directs all squads to converge at the 4th Battle Simulation Dome, armed with as much firepower and ammunition as they can carry. As Squad 13 escorts Inspector James and his guards toward the battle dome, Han takes the opportunity to question Inspector James about the situation. Han asks pointedly, "What do you know about what's happening here, Inspector?" Inspector James appears hesitant, deep in thought. Han continues, sensing there might be more to the situation. "It seemed like you may know something, even though I don't believe you're the spy." Suddenly, it dawns on Inspector James, and he blurts out, "The pure humanist." Jose, overhearing, asks for clarification. Inspector James explains, "They call themselves pure humanists. Their mission is to eradicate all psykers because they do not consider them to be human. It's their religious belief." As Knut shouts in disbelief about the pure humanists targeting psykers, especially those who will be tasked with fighting dragons in the future, enemy choppers approach. Inspector James responds, explaining the extremists' belief that psykers are responsible for attracting dragons, despite the gateway portal existing long before psykers. From one of the choppers, the apparent leader points down, declaring Han and the others as the demons referred to by their god. As multiple enemy choppers swarm over Ark's compound, the automated self-defense systems activate, unleashing heavy artillery that manages to shoot down a few of the choppers. Ark soldiers mobilize towards the site, spotting several enemy choppers successfully landing and disgorging troops. As they approach the war zone, Han alerts his team. "We're almost at the war zone, everyone." He scans the area and notices a chopper spiraling down in flames. Determined, they move towards the crash site cautiously. Han reminds the group that the crash doesn't necessarily mean the occupants are dead. Knut adds that he saw at least 4 enemies aboard the chopper. Han leads his crew strategically between large buildings for cover, prioritizing their safety along with Inspector James. He grimly acknowledges the grim reality of the imminent conflict. Turning to his squad, Han makes a sobering statement: "I need all of you to understand what we're about to do here and now." As they all exchange nervous glances, bracing themselves for the coming battle, Han grimly states to his squad, "We are about to commit murder today." As Ark soldiers systematically take down the invading enemies, the apparent leader of the pure humanists, dressed in a white hood, grabs a fallen comrade and uses him as a shield while returning fire. In a fervent tone, he declares, "Earth does not have room for you demons here," his eyes betraying a fanatical determination. Inspector James surveys Squad 13 and discerns that most members are not accustomed to killing, except for Han, who appears resolute and prepared for the grim task ahead. Knowing that the pure humanists are ex-military and skilled in combat despite lacking psychic abilities, Inspector James follows Han and Knut towards the battleground. With a tactical advantage, Inspector James joins Han and Knut, revealing a hidden strategy. Han turns to Knut and asks if he is ready for what lies ahead. Knut, drawing on his previous experience hunting deer before Ark, responds steadfastly, "I'll treat them all the same, knowing they'll kill us without hesitation." Han recalls a vivid flashback from his past in South Korea, where he finds himself running desperately in pouring rain. A man's angry voice echoes behind him, shouting, "Stop now, you scumbag." Each step Han takes sinks his feet deeper into the waterlogged ground as he flees with a sack full of stolen apples. Ahead, railroad tracks signal an approaching train. Seeing a potential escape route, Han dashes towards the tracks, hoping the train will intervene and halt his pursuer. Midway across, his hoodie is abruptly yanked backward, pulling him back. The enraged man gains on him as the train's headlights draw nearer. In a split-second decision, Han whirls around and delivers a forceful kick to the man's face, causing him to release his grip, but tragically falling victim to the oncoming train. At just 10 years old, Han realizes with shock that he has unintentionally caused the man's death in pursuit of a bag of apples. In the present, Han and Knut cautiously approach the scene where a chopper has crashed. Han signals Knut to halt as they take cover at the corner of a nearby building. Han quickly improvises, using a mini airbit to float his jacket out as a decoy. The distraction works as a volley of gunfire tears through the jacket, momentarily confusing a nearby pure humanist soldier. Taking advantage of the distraction, Knut swiftly eliminates the soldier. Another enemy soldier takes notice and aims at Knut, but before he can fire, Han takes him out with a precise shot to the head. Knut, realizing he only wounded the first soldier and needing to finish the job, faces the enemy soldier who now looks up in fear. Feeling the pressure, Knut remembers his training and forces himself to remain composed. Making eye contact with the enemy, he fires decisively and ensures the threat is neutralized. Han, calling out to Knut in a serious tone, hears Knut reassure him that he's all right and ready to continue. In the midst of the chaos, the rest of Squad 13 maintains watch over Inspector James and the restrained guards. Kuro's body trembles with nervous anticipation, noticeable to Inspector James, who realizes Kuro would be ineffective in direct combat. Seeing Koro fixated in one direction, Inspector James seizes the opportunity to discreetly cut through the ropes binding him. Suddenly, a pure humanist soldier appears on the corner, weapon drawn. Koro shouts a warning, "Get down." Caught off guard, Jose and Guijo are slow to react, but Inspector James swiftly shoots the soldier, surprising Koro, who realizes the inspector has taken his firearm. As Inspector James momentarily lets his guard down, Koro spots another enemy through a window and employs his telekinetic abilities to deflect incoming gunfire, protecting Inspector James. With the immediate threat neutralized, Inspector James wastes no time and shoots down the enemy Koro identified. He then asks Koro if he foresees any more intruders, to which Koro nervously replies no. Impressed despite the chaotic circumstances, Inspector James acknowledges Koro's lack of proficiency with firearms but praises his incredible psychic abilities. Meanwhile, Han and Knut return sprinting to the scene, concerned about everyone's safety. Inspector James hands the firearm back to Koro and raises his hands in surrender, asking Han if he has a plan to navigate their current predicament. Han meets his gaze with a determined nod, silently conveying that he indeed has a strategy to guide them through the ongoing crisis. As more enemy soldiers converge on the compound, a sudden massive explosion rocks the scene, blowing open one of the main protected entrances. Amidst the settling dust, the leader of the pure humanists emerges, brandishing his gun and rallying his troops. He declares vehemently, "Let's exterminate these parasites. Ark has deceived us long enough. It's been 10 years since the dragons last appeared, and we know Ark is training psykers to dominate humanity. Kill them all for the sake of our race." Meanwhile, at the fourth battle simulation ground where all the inspectors and guards are assembled, Han and Squad 13 join the gathering. Tensions escalate as one of the restrained inspectors lashes out, demanding to know who Squad 13 thinks they are for treating them this way. Before he can finish his outburst, Dell, exhibiting his formidable psychic abilities, grabs the inspector and issues a chilling warning. Dell's aura flashes with intensity as he accuses one of the inspectors of being a traitor responsible for the day's violence. The terrified inspector trembles under Dell's gaze, nearly losing control of his bladder, but Dell releases him, casting a disgruntled glance at Han. Han intervenes to calm Dell down, reminding him of their duty to protect the inspectors despite the circumstances. Dell, visibly annoyed, walks away, his anger palpable but momentarily restrained. Jose, amidst the chaos and commotion, observes Dell, the renowned psycho prodigy, taking orders from Han at the first year's training grounds. Outside, the sounds of another battle echo, indicating the end of a fierce clash where Instructor Chen grapples with one of the pure humanist soldiers. Despite visible exhaustion, Instructor Chen manages to overpower and neutralize the last of 6 assailants who had stormed in with guns blazing, injuring him in the process. The first-year students witnessing this struggle are visibly shaken, seeing their usually fearless instructor in agonizing pain. In a moment of urgency, Instructor Chen radios in, urgently calling for Han's assistance. Han and the other first-year students swiftly respond, sprinting towards Instructor Chen's location. Han realizes the pure humanists intend to eliminate the young psykers. Instructor Chen communicates again through the radio, informing Han that another group of enemy soldiers is advancing towards a shelter where only first-year children and possibly a few instructors are located. He tasks Han and his team with intercepting the attackers. The gravity of the situation sinks in for Han and his crew. They must act swiftly to protect the vulnerable children in the shelter from the imminent threat. Determined and focused, they prepare to engage the enemy and safeguard their young comrades and instructors. At the shelter, chaos erupts as enemy gunfire claims the life of a first-year instructor. The leader of the pure humanists, visibly annoyed, surveys the labyrinthine structure of the shelter. He radios his squad, updating them on the situation and instructing them to prepare for battle as incoming enemies approach. Meanwhile, Han and his crew close in on the enemy squad guarding the shelter door. Han briefs his team urgently, emphasizing the need to eliminate the enemies swiftly to reach the vulnerable first-year students. Han turns to Dell, seeking assurance. "You think you can block all the incoming fire?" Dell, exuding confidence, powers up and declares, "I'll do better than that. You all fire on my mark." With Dell leading the charge, Han directs the crew to follow closely and await Dell's signal. As they near the enemy position, gunfire erupts. Dell swiftly erects a force field, shielding the crew from the onslaught of bullets. With precision timing, Dell signals for everyone to open fire. He unleashes his brilliant aura, blinding the enemies and catching them off guard with his immense psychic power. Han and the rest of the squad capitalize on the moment, swiftly dispatching the enemy forces. Only one enemy soldier remains, defiant in the face of defeat. He shouts epithets at them, calling them mutant trash and threatening their demise. After Knut swiftly dispatches the last enemy soldier with a bullet to the head, Han places a calming hand on Knut's shoulder, urging him to temper his aggression. Addressing the squad, Han emphasizes the gravity of their mission, stating, "I chose each of you for a reason. We share a mindset willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. I've learned the hard way not to let emotions cloud judgment. We must remain clear-headed to succeed." Han then outlines their strategic advantage, pointing out their thorough knowledge of the compound's layout. He sketches a map, detailing their plan to leverage this advantage. Han assigns each squad leader and their respective inspectors specific positions on the map, directing them to secure these locations. The squads, including Dimitri's, begin moving out, each focused on their designated tasks. Before leaving, Dimitri pauses and addresses Han, seeking approval for a personal matter. He explains that his second-in-command will lead the squad to their assigned location, but he needs to attend to something important himself. Han trusts Dimitri's judgment and allows him to attend to urgent matters while the squads move to their designated positions. Dimitri heads to the psychiatry ward, where he walks into a scene of devastation and carnage. Shocked and disheartened by what he sees, Dimitri confronts a third-year student, the same one he had challenged and lost to previously. Dimitri questions the third year's actions, pointing out that the people he has killed, including one he holds in his hands, are allies aligned with Ark. The third year dismisses Dimitri's assertion, scoffing at the idea that Ark is on their side. He derides Ark's training simulations, insisting that as a third year, they face real missions fraught with unimaginable horrors and despair. He describes the overwhelming fear and hopelessness he and his fellow psykers endure, convinced that their chances of success are slim against formidable adversaries. Dimitri observes the third year's state and quickly recognizes him as a victim of the overwhelming fear induced by encounters with the dragons. As the third year releases his grip on the Ark member's body, he confronts Dimitri with a cynical declaration that they are all mere pawns in Ark's larger scheme. He accuses Ark of manipulating and mentally breaking them through brutal missions, followed by experimental drugs designed to control their minds. According to him, Ark and the government have sinister plans to manipulate and exploit them, rendering their efforts and the war futile. Dimitri initially reacts with a chuckle, partly out of disbelief and partly out of the irony of their situation. However, his demeanor quickly shifts as he drops his firearm and begins to undo his jacket. With determination in his eyes and his psychic aura beginning to glow, Dimitri asserts that while he harbors no love for Ark, he is fiercely protective of his family back home. He declares their primary goal is to eliminate the dragons, and anyone, including Ark or government forces, who stands in the way of that goal will be dealt with ruthlessly. The enemy forces, using their GPS maps, pinpoint the locations of shelters through where the first-year children are housed. Observing Han and his squad nearing their position on the tracker, the leader of the pure humanists loads his grenade launcher, confident in his ability to eliminate them all with his heavy weaponry. Meanwhile, Han and his team, unaware of Ark's shelters on the compound, are perplexed as to how the enemy could have discovered these locations, suspecting a spy among the inspectors. Han voices his suspicion aloud, affirming that the leak of shelter information confirms their suspicions about a spy within their ranks. His focus sharpens when he spots a tripwire just ahead of their path, realizing it's connected to a live hand grenade. He regrets not having Kuro with them for his foresight abilities, which could have prevented such traps. Simultaneously, the enemy leader cautiously opens the shelter door, then forcefully swings it wide as he announces his discovery. Inside, his soldiers hesitantly point out that the targets are unarmed children, questioning the ethics of attacking them. In the tense standoff, the pure humanist leader justifies his intent to eliminate the young psykers, citing them as a future threat to humanity. Amidst the children's cries and the soldiers' protests, one soldier voices concern over the impending massacre, only to be summarily executed by their leader. Undeterred by dissent, the leader prepares to unleash his weapon on the unarmed first years, rationalizing it as a necessary evil for the greater good. Suddenly, chaos erupts as gunfire rings out. Han reacts swiftly, noticing Knut has been shot. With blood seeping from Knut's leg, Han and the squad pull him to safety. As they maneuver to evade the incoming threat, Han spots an enemy aiming a grenade launcher directly at them. The situation seems dire, but Han's psychic abilities manifest in a dazzling display of control and power. Han's aura intensifies as he channels his telekinetic energy to intercept the incoming grenade. With precision and strength, he redirects the grenade back toward the enemies. The explosive projectile detonates among the assailants, causing a massive blast that momentarily halts their advance and neutralizes several of them. Han and his squad swiftly eliminate the remaining enemy soldiers, ensuring the immediate threat to the first-year children is neutralized. Amidst the aftermath, a dead soldier's watch emits a static signal, broadcasting a chilling update. Shelter is cleared of first years, moving to the next target. Han registers the urgency of the message, knowing they must act quickly to protect the remaining shelters. Meanwhile, in another part of the compound, Dimitri finds himself violently thrown through a glass window by a disturbed third-year psyker. Unrelenting, the third year continues his assault, swiftly pursuing Dimitri as he crashes into a wall. Before Dimitri can recover, the third year delivers a punishing gut punch, causing him to cough up in agony. Brandishing a sharp weapon infused with his psychic aura, the third year taunts Dimitri, belittling his efforts and claiming superiority. As the third year prepares to strike a decisive blow, Dimitri, though battered, remains steadfast. His demeanor shifts from pain to determination, his own aura glowing intensely. With an abrupt display of resilience and power, Dimitri crushes the third year's weapon against his forehead, shocking his assailant into disbelief. Unwavering, Dimitri condemns the third year for his cowardice and declares his shame for ever losing to such a foe. Meanwhile, back in the underground shelter, Knut reflects on his past as a first year, recalling a moment when he built a raft to escape the island where survival training took place. He reminisces on the support he received from Hoes upon becoming a second year, joining Han's Squad 13. Knut reflects deeply on his past struggles and failures during training, feeling haunted by memories of barely passing and moments of disappointment. Now, ordered to stay behind due to his injury, while the rest of his squad presses on to protect the first-year children, he grapples with feelings of inadequacy and frustration at being unable to contribute when most needed. Meanwhile, at the fourth battle simulation arena where the other squads are engaged in fierce combat, enemy forces surround them. Amidst the chaos, an enemy soldier hurls a hand grenade toward the squads. Just as disaster seems imminent, a second-year psyker notices the incoming threat and swiftly uses his telekinesis to redirect the grenade into the air, neutralizing the immediate danger. The grenade explodes harmlessly behind cover, leaving the enemy soldiers disoriented and ineffective. Realizing their advantage, the enemy discusses the potential arrival of air support to bombard ARC's forces. Despite this looming threat, the second-year psykers, following Han's strategic guidance, successfully hold off the enemy attacks. In the tense situation at the underground shelter, an enemy soldier is aggressively trying to breach the door to Shelter D, intent on reaching the young first-year children inside. Meanwhile, another soldier alerts the group that Han and his squad are rapidly approaching. This news surprises the enemy leader, who had underestimated Han and the second-year psykers, assuming they would be overwhelmed by the sight of the massacre at Shelter A. Han and his crew sprint towards the enemy position, driven by urgency to protect the children and confront the enemy threat head-on. As they close in, Han checks the enemy GPS device he retrieved and realizes they are dangerously close to the enemy squad. He swiftly orders everyone to halt, ensuring they do not walk into a potentially deadly ambush. Surveying the situation amidst the concrete rubble, Han assesses the proximity of the enemy squad just around the corner. Aware of the critical moment, Han instructs his crew to give him a few moments to devise a strategic plan. Outside, chaos ensues as enemy air support, under heavy fire from ARC's defenses, begins to falter. The bomber plane, badly damaged, plunges downward through the barrage, hurtling directly toward the 4th battle simulation arena where the second-year psykers are stationed, adding to the intensity of the situation. Inside the underground shelter, Han quickly formulates a plan with his crew. They will use the vents above to sneak into Shelter D before the enemy breaches the door. The goal is to ambush the enemy soldiers as they attempt to enter, preventing them from harming the young first-year children inside. However, Dell raises a valid concern about the thickness of the vents potentially being insufficient to shield them from enemy gunfire. Han, driven by the urgency of the situation and the need to act swiftly, dismisses Dell's concerns, emphasizing that time is of the essence to save the children from imminent danger. Just as they prepare to execute the plan, a footstep and a familiar voice interrupt them. It's Knut, who arrives unexpectedly, having overheard part of their plan. He offers his assistance, acknowledging the gravity of the situation and the need for additional support to ensure the success of their mission. Han notices Knut walking without a limp, seemingly healed, which surprises Dell. Knut casually reveals he has developed a healing factor, attributing it to his frequent injuries. Embracing his newfound ability, Knut volunteers to enter the vents alone, intending to draw attention as a distraction. Han assigns Dell and himself to lead the charge, instructing the rest of the crew to follow once the enemy reacts to Knut's noisy distraction. As Knut noisily traverses the vents, creating a deliberate ruckus, Han hears the enemies react with loud clanks. Han takes advantage of the distraction to signal the crew to rush forward. Enemy soldiers begin shooting into the vents, prompting Han to open fire, quickly neutralizing one of the attackers. Dell, anticipating the situation, activates his psychic shield to protect the crew from incoming gunfire, demonstrating his psychic abilities in action. As gunfire erupts in the vents, Knut crashes through under direct fire, leading an enemy soldier to report to their leader that Knut has been killed and the door to Shelter D is open. The enemy leader responds by intensifying fire and urging his team to enter Shelter D. Han urgently shouts to his crew to prevent the enemy from gaining entry, urging them to act quickly. However, amidst the chaos, Knut, bloodied and riddled with bullets, unexpectedly rises to his feet. With a menacing demeanor, he challenges the enemy and his own team, demanding to know where they think they're going despite shooting him down. Han and Dell, along with the enemy soldiers, are stunned as Knut's psychic green aura begins to glow brightly. He asserts his resilience, stating he can heal from any injury, and raises his gun defiantly, laughing in defiance. Meanwhile, outside, Kuro experiences an intense foresight vision as his eyes glow red, revealing the imminent danger of the approaching bomber plane. He reflects inwardly, relieved that Han is not present, believing him to be the last person who should face death in this dire situation. This marks the conclusion of the first part of the second season of this manhwa. The second part of the second season will be uploaded soon. To show your support for the channel, and help speed up the release of recaps for your favorite manhwa, please consider subscribing to the channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.